How to understand the Buddha's teachings? When we hear a Dharma talk or study a sutra, our only job is to remain open. Usually, when we hear or read something new, we just compare it to our own ideas. If it is the same, we accept it and say that it is correct. If it is not, we say it is incorrect. In either case, we learn nothing. If we read or listen with an open mind and an open heart, the rain of the Dharma will penetrate the soil of our concentration, consciousness. The gentle spring rain permeates the soil of my soul. A seed that has lain deeply in the earth for many years just smiles. While reading or listening, don't work too hard. Be like the earth. When the rain comes, the earth only has to open herself up to the rain. Allow the rain of the Dharma to come in and penetrate the seeds that are buried deep in your consciousness. A teacher cannot give you the truth is already in you. You only need to open yourself, body, mind, and heart, so that His teachings will penetrate your own seeds of understanding and enlightenment. If you let the words enter you, the soil and the seeds will do the rest of the work. The transmission of the teachings of the Buddha can be divided into three streams: Source Buddhism, many schools Buddhism, and Mahayana Buddhism. So, what is Source Buddhism? Source Buddhism includes all the teachings the Buddha gave during his lifetime. 140 years after the Buddha's great passing away, the Sangha divided into two schools: Mahasangika, literally majority, referring to those who wanted changes, and Thaviravada, literally school of elders, referring to those who opposed the changes advocated by the Mahasangikas. 100 years after that, the Thaviravada divided into two branches: Sarvastivada, the school that proclaims everything is, and Vibhajyavada, the school that discriminates. The Vibhajyavadins, supported by King Ashoka, flourished in the Ganges valley, while the Sarvastivadins went north to Kashmir. For 400 years during and after the Buddha's lifetime, his teachings were transmitted only orally. After that, monks in the Tamrashatiya school, those who wear copper colored robes in Sri Lanka, a derivative of the Vibhajyavada school, began to think about writing the Buddha's discourses on palm leaves, and it took another 100 years to begin. By the time it is said that there was only one monk who had memorized the whole canon and that he was somewhat arrogant. The other monks had to persuade him to recite the discourses so they could write them down. When we hear this, we feel a little uneasy knowing that an arrogant monk may not have been the best vehicle to transmit the teachings of the Buddha. Even during the Buddha's lifetime, there were people such as the monk Aritha who misunderstood the Buddha's teachings and conveyed them incorrectly. It is also apparent that some of the monks who memorized the sutras over the centuries did not understand their deepest meaning, or at the very least, they forgot or changed some words. As a result, some of the Buddha's teachings were distorted even before they were written down. Before the Buddha attained full realization of the path, for example, he had tried various methods to suppress his mind, and they did not work. In one discourse, he recounted, I thought, why don't I grit my teeth, press my tongue against my palate, and use my mind to repress my mind? Then, as a wrestler might take hold of the head or the shoulder of someone weaker than he, and in order to restrain and coerce that person, he has to hold him down constantly without letting go for a moment. So I gritted my teeth, pressed my tongue against my palate, and used my mind to suppress my mind. As I did this, I was bathed in sweat. Although I was not lacking in strength, although I maintained mindfulness and did not fall from mindfulness, my body and my mind were not at peace, and I was exhausted by these efforts. This practice caused other feelings of pain to arise in me beside the pain associated with the austerities, and I was not able to tame my mind. Obviously, the Buddha was telling us not to practice in this way. Yet, this passage was later inserted into other discourses to convey exactly the opposite meaning. Just as the wrestler takes hold of the head or the shoulder of someone weaker than himself, restrain and coerces that person and holds him down constantly, not letting go for one moment. So, a monk who meditates in order to stop all unwholesome thoughts of desire and aversion, when these thoughts continues to rise, should grit his teeth, press his tongue against his palate, and do his best to use his mind to beat down and defeat his mind. Often we need to study several discourses and compare them in order to understand which is the true teaching of the Buddha. It is like stringing precious jewels together to make a necklace. If we see each sutra in light of the overall body of teachings, we will not be attached to any one thing. With comparative study and looking deeply into the meaning of the texts, we can surmise what is solid teaching that will help our practice and what is probably an incorrect transmission. By the time the Buddha's discourses were written down in Pali in Sri Lanka, there were 18 or 20 schools, and each had its own recensions of Buddha's teachings. These schools did not tear the teachings of the Buddha apart but were threads of a single garment. Two of these renaissance exists today. The Tamrasatiya and Sarvastivada's canons, recorded at about the same time. The former was written down in Pali and the later in Sanskrit and Prakrit. The sutras that were written down in Pali in Sri Lanka are known as the Southern Transmission or teachings of the oldest. The Sarvastivada text, known as the Northern Transmission, exists only in a fragmented form. Fortunately, they were translated into Chinese and Tibetan, and many of these translations are still available. We have to remember that the Buddha did not speak Pali, Sanskrit, or Prakrit. He spoke a local dialect called Magadhi or Ardha Magadhi, and there is no record of the Buddha's words in his own language. By comparing the two extinct sutra recensions, we can see which teachings must have preceded Buddhism's dividing into schools. When the sutras of both transmissions are the same, we can conclude that what they say must have been there before the division. When the decisions are different, we can surmise that one or both might be incorrect. The northern transmission preserved some discourses better, and the southern transmission preserved others better. That is the advantage of having two transmissions to compare. The third stream of Buddha's teaching, Mahayana Buddhism, arose in the 1st and 2nd century BCE 6. In the centuries following the Buddha's life, the practice of Dharma had become the exclusive domain of monks and nuns, and lay people were limited to supporting the ordained Sangha with food, shelter, clothing, and medicine. By the 1st century BCE, many monks and nuns seemed to be practicing only for themselves, and reaction was inevitable. The ideal put forth by the Mahayanists was that of the Bodhisattva who practiced and taught for the benefit of everyone. These three streams complement one another. It was impossible for source Buddhism to remember everything the Buddha had taught. So it was necessary for many schools, Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism, to renew teachings that had been forgotten or overlooked. Like all traditions, Buddhism needs to renew itself regularly in order to stay alive and grow. The Buddha always found new ways to express his awakening. Since the Buddha's lifetime, Buddhists have continued to open new Dharma doors to express and share the teachings begun in the Deer Park in Sarnath. Please remember that a sutra or a Dharma talk is not insight in and of itself. It is a means of presenting insight using words and concepts. When you use a map to get to Paris, once you have arrived, you can put the map away and enjoy being in Paris. If you spend all your time with your map, if you get caught by the words and the notions presented by the Buddha, you will miss the reality. The Buddha said many times, "My teaching is like a finger pointing to the moon. Do not mistake the finger for the moon." In the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, it is said if you explain the meaning of every word and phrase in the sutras, you slander the Buddhas of the three times past, present, and future. But if you disregard even one word of the sutras, you risk speaking the words of Mara. Sutras are essential guides for our practice, but we must read them carefully and use our own intelligence and help of a teacher and sangha to understand the true meaning and put it into practice. After reading a sutra or any spiritual text, we should feel lighter, not heavier. Buddhist teachings are meant to awaken our true self, not merely to add to our storehouse of knowledge. From time to time, the Buddha refused to answer a question posed to him. The philosopher Vatsigota asked, "Is there a self?" And the Buddha did not say anything. Vatsigota persisted, "Do you mean there is no self?" But the Buddha still did not reply. Finally, Vatsigota left. Ananda, the Buddha's attendant, was puzzled. "Lord, you always teach that there is no self. Why did you not say so to Vatsigota?" The Buddha told Ananda that he did not reply because Vatsigota was looking for a theory, not a way to remove obstacles. On another occasion, the Buddha had a group of disciples discussing whether or not he had said such and such. And he told them, "For 45 years I have not uttered a single word." He did not want his disciples to be caught by words or notions, even his own. When an archaeologist finds a statue that has been broken, he invites sculptors who specialize in restoration to study the art of that period and repair the statue. We must do the same if we have an overall view of the teachings of Buddha. When a piece is missing or had been added, we have to recognize it and repair the damage. According to Buddhist psychology, our consciousness is divided into 8 parts, including mind consciousness and store consciousness. Store consciousness is described as a field in which every kind of seed can be planted: seeds of suffering, sorrow, fear, and anger, and seeds of happiness and hope. When these seeds sprout, they manifest in our mind consciousness, and when they do, they become stronger. From